Hail and well met, adventurers, and welcome to the finale of Season 1 of Rough Start, where we here at Rough Magic Games teach you how to play a different tabletop role playing game every episode. That's right, we run through it so you don't have a rough start. My name is Charlotte, I use she, her pronouns, and I am a professional game master with Rough Magic Games, a collection of many more professional GMs for hire. If you're interested in playing a game with one of our game masters, be sure to check out roughmagicgames.com. If you already know who we are and love what we do, check out our Patreon. The link is in the doobly-doo below. I love exploring the wide world of pen and paper role-playing games, and I can't wait to take you all on this journey with me. Tonight, I am joined by...
I'm Richard. My pronouns are he, him. I've been a huge fan of the system we're discussing today. I am the co-founder of Buff Magic, which we launched right before the pandemic started, and I have been playing tabletop role-playing games since I was 8 years old, and I am a lot older than 8 years old, and I have been, it's my hobby, it's the thing that I love to do the most. It brings me a lot of joy, and I'm very, very glad to be able to share just one of my favorite games with all of you today.
Yes, I am so happy to have you on the show, Richard, one of the
Thank you.
co-founders of Rough Magic themselves. I bow
Yes.
down to you. Uh,
Yeah, I don't think I'm worthy of a bow, but I appreciate it nonetheless.
Yes, and for one of your favorite games, no less, it's quickly becoming one of my favorite games as well. And what game might that be, Richard?
That would be Pathfinder, second edition.
Yes, that is right. Tonight we are talking about Pathfinder, second edition specifically. Pathfinder is one of the giants of the TTRPG space. It's a fantasy tabletop role-playing game where you tell heroic tales in a world full of quests, magic, monsters, and treasure, set in the world of Golarion. The first edition of Pathfinder was published in 2009 by Paizo Publishing, and we're going to get into a little bit of a TTRPG history lesson right now. It was published on the advent of Dungeons and Dragons 4th edition because Wizard of the Coast had a more restrictive game systems license. So Pathfinder, Paizo decided to shoot off and do their own thing. The first edition of Pathfinder largely used the Dungeons and Dragons 3.5 rules, but with their own twist on it. On its release, Pathfinder won a variety of awards and at times even outsold Dungeons and Dragons. Fourth edition specifically, so the bar was kind of a lot lower back then, but that's a digression. In 2019, they decided to update those rules and release Pathfinder second edition. Then in 2023, on the potential advent of a different, more restrictive game license, Paizo decided to release their second edition remastered books, fine-tuning some of the rules and completely divesting from any language used in Dungeons and Dragons. So the second edition is what we will be talking about today.
And I will add that as part of the remastered rules, it's 100% compatible with anything they've done before for the old Pathfinder second edition books. So if you have those old books, they're still compatible with the remastered rules that they've begun pushing out.
Yes. And that's what's lovely about it is it's really just like a 2.1.
Yeah,
It
it's a fine
is
one. Yeah. That's a lot of errata and a lot of very, very fun tweaks to the system that have made it more dynamic for me to play. Well, me to GM.
yes, it's the fine tuning, which is super helpful when a game that is, beloved and still worked on by a lot of people gets that fine tuning to make something that is, really balanced and well designed.
Yeah.
But we'll get into the mechanics a little bit later. I want to touch on the lore of Pathfinder. I think we've got a map on the next slide of the world of Golarion. So in my home game, we play in a homebrew, so I actually don't know too much about the actual official Pathfinder lore. I know little bits and pieces of it, but Richard, I'm gonna let you take this one away.
Sure. So a lot of the games that I run, on the other hand, are set in the world of Golarion, which is the core world that Pathfinder Second Edition is set. But like Charlotte says, you can absolutely run your own homebrew world in the system as well. But the thing I like most about Galarian as a world is that it has something for everyone. There's different cultures everywhere. There's different kind of themes. If you're looking for something that's very undead heavy, maybe you want to run a game that involves the nation of Gap, which has ruled by undead overlords, or maybe you want something that's a little bit darker, more horror theme. You want to go into Ustala, which has all these werewolves and vampires running amok. There really is something for everyone wherever you look in Golarion. I will admit that if you ask me to pronounce some of these names, I will probably get them wrong. So anyone who is a Pathfinder fan, a Galarian fan that is watching the stream, I apologize in advance. I do want to mention specifically that as of late, Paizo, who is the company that that owns Pathfinder, that's pushing out all these books, has been really focused on creating a very, very diverse world. They're making sure to include cultures and communities and peoples that we might not necessarily see in a lot of other fantasy campaigns that tend to be very Eurocentric, very medieval, kind of knights in shining armor, that kind of thing. But here we have places like Shanxia or Fuja and all of these other places, like in South Asian countries. We have Magambia, which is more African-themed countries. We have places for any sort of culture or themes that you want to work with. And what I love best is when Paizo hires the writers to work on these books, they are specifically looking to reach out to those specific communities that are represented and by those cultures they are working to make sure that they are not creating. I've been playing TTRPGs since like second edition AD&D, and there are some books out there that if I look and read them now, I can't help but cringe. They're trying to stay away from that and create a really inclusive gaming environment for all players, no matter what their ethnicity is, no matter what their culture is. They also are doing an incredible job of creating these adventure paths, which they release like one very, very thin book every month that's usually set like one of four, or one of six, or one of three that takes you from level 1 to level 8, or maybe level 9 to level 20, or whatever it can be. They've been using those as well to expand the lore of Galarian. And as someone who's been playing Pathfinder since first edition, it's fascinating to see how the second edition rulebooks and the books that they have about the um, world and the lore have taken into account the adventures that happened in all of those previous adventure paths. So it feels almost like a living world if you've been a part of it for so long, like I was when I did the very, very first adventure in Pathfinder first edition, all the way up until now, the adventures I'm still running and reading. That's the lore and world of Galarian. I don't want to spend too much time on it because I do think one of the great things about the Pathfinder system is it is very much easy to create your own worlds and your own adventures and your own lore using just the rules of the system.
I love that. The highlight of, making sure that all these diverse, identities and circumstances are seen and heard in Pathfinder, I super duper love. And
Yeah. I would say that,
I
as someone who is South Asian and who also identifies as having a disability or deaf, getting to see those little moments of like things I don't see in other TTRPG books is incredible. I never thought, like in all my life, that I would see um, hearing aids, like rules for hearing aids, and rules that Paizo just said don't screw over your players if they want to play someone with a disability, because
yeah.
this is a fantasy world. This is a magical world. There's no reason to do that. Unless you and your players agree on it, there's no reason to do it. There's like if someone wants to play a blind character, then just give them the blind feat for free. They say that in bold letters right in one of the books. They're very, very encouraging at making sure that whatever identities are at the table have a way to be represented in the mechanics as well.
That's fantastic. You love to see it. More companies should do
Yeah,
that. Something I also really enjoy about kind of as a little lore snippet, Pathfinder has these characters called icons, and there's one icon for each class in the game. So there are these little characters that have their own story, and that kind of represent each of the classes, which I think is very helpful, not only to like build out the lore of their world, but also just to tell you how these classes work in like a
yeah.
nice, neat little way. Um, Super helpful. Um, my other little favorite bit of lore is that elves are from outer space. They are aliens.
Yeah.
I think that's great.
Do you want to know my wildest bit of lore about Pathfinder that I love?
What's up?
So back in first edition, there was this adventure path called Reign of Winter, and towards the end of the adventure path, the players got transported into real world Earth in the time of Anastasia and Rasputin,
Oh my
thanks to the
gosh.
magic of Baba Yaga. And
Oh
of
my
course, you fought
goodness.
Rasputin in an adventure called Rasputin Must Die. It is one of my favorite things because it's just so ridiculous. You're going up against Russian army and everything. And then towards the end of the adventure, you end up saving Anastasia and bringing her to Golarion. And she is now one of the rulers of a country called, I believe, Irison. And it's just this ridiculous nonsense that I just love that you can only get if you have a world like this where it's just something for everyone wherever you want to go.
Oh, that's camp. I mean, what can I say?
Absolutely.
That's fantastic. All right. Yeah, I think if there's nothing else we want to touch on the lore, I think we can head on into kind of the basic mechanics. I think we've got the next slide. Yes. So easy peasy. Pathfinder is a D20 system, much like Dungeons and Dragons. Would you look at that? In Pathfinder, you would roll a 20-sided die plus your statistic, plus any bonus or penalties you might have. And that would be your total. A statistic or whatever skill that you're rolling. This is the foundation that the entire game is built upon. Simple, easy peasy. You love to see it. There are also difficulty classes in this game, so that result you would compare to a difficulty class. Sometimes that's public knowledge, sometimes it's secret. Sometimes the GM makes completely secret rolls behind the screen in Pathfinder. Um, and these bonuses and penalties in part of this equation, there are three different types of bonuses in Pathfinder. You have your circumstance bonus, your status bonus, and your item bonus. And important to note, say for instance you have a circumstance bonus from two different sources. Like I don't know, as an example that I have a lot of personal experience with, when you are scouting, you get a circumstance bonus to your initiative roll. But as a gunslinger, you already have a circumstance bonus to your initiative, and those do not stack. You pick whichever one is the best, and you leave it at that.
Yeah, I think the example that always comes up in my games, similarly for spells, is the Courageous Anthem from Bards and Guidance from Cleric. They don't stack. Generally speaking, any bonuses of the same type do not stack. I think the other thing that I like to make that makes the system very, very elegant is there are no opposed rolls. It's always against DC. And a lot of other D20 systems, it's you roll, then you roll, and it creates this very, very swingy system where if I'm a very perceptive character, you're rolling against my perception DC, which is 10 plus my perception score. And that determines the success, the failure, critical success, or critical failure.
Yeah. Perfect. Love that. So how do critical successes and critical failures work in this game? I think we've got that on the next slide as well.
Well, there's two ways to have critical success, critical failures. One is the Tyrant and Shoe, natural 20, natural 1. Natural 20 is always critical success, natural 1 is always critical failure. Um, as a GM, I roll a lot of natural 1s and it kind of sucks. But that's the game. The other way to do it is if you it has to do with succeeding or failing by 10 over the DC will make you have a critical success or a critical failure. I think the best example I can get is in combat. You're trying to hit someone's armor class. And someone has armor class of, let's say, 15, and you roll a 17 on dice, and after all of your bonuses and penalties are added, you end up with a total of 25. You critically succeeded, you do way more damage. The system is really based on the idea of critical successes and critical failures. And I think it's one of the things that really lends to the teamwork aspect of the game. Because you're able to you want to see your teammates finding ways to give you bonuses, give the enemy penalties, and vice versa. So,
Yeah,
yeah, yeah.
absolutely. For our visual learners, can we hit the next slide for the crits? There we go. Beautiful. Yeah, that kind of spells it out in plain English. Although I think, don't quote me on this, I think in the remaster, a nat 20 simply upgrades the result. So if for some reason like a 20 would
It's
fail, it
always
would
sort of
upgrade it to a
upgrade the
success
results. Yeah,
only and not a
yeah,
critical. Yeah.
yeah, yeah. That is, I would say it happens very, very rarely in the games that I
Yeah.
run, but it has happened with someone rolls an natural 20. I think when I put them up against the big bad, and I wanted to make them feel super, super powerful, so they tried to attack him. Someone rolled a natural 20, like, yes, I critically hit. I'm like, no, you didn't. Normally, that would be a critical failure with all of your bonuses, but because you rolled a natural 20 instead of being a critical failure, it's just a failure. And as you could see the terror in their faces, just that sort of like flash across the eyes, like, we done fucked up now. And it was
Oh,
a
that's
great,
so
great, great
scary.
moment to really drive home that issue up. This is scary. This is bad. I think in most day to day sort of adventuring that doesn't usually happen unless, for example, you are a terribly uncharismatic barbarian trying to roll a diplomacy check to
Hmm.
seduce some queen or something, and then you'll probably see that mechanic happen where
Yeah.
it won't happen. It's still, I like that it still says, you may have failed, but natural 20, you succeeded. You may have critically failed, but because you rolled a natural 20, it isn't as bad as it could have been. So you
Yep,
have those sort of
exactly.
levels to really play off of that. It's a great, great, great tool for GMs that like to use the roles as part of the narrative that have the idea of failing forward so you can get kind of gauge of how much they fail forward.
Yeah, I've even started using it was in a game like Dungeons and Dragons, not to name names or anything. But the critical success or critical failure may not have much effect outside of combat, and I've definitely started implementing the Pathfinder style of, oh, on a critical success you get a little something extra, on a critical failure you get a little something extra in the
Yeah,
opposite
yeah,
direction.
yeah.
And I think it's super nice to have that degrees of success or failure in a game. Perfect. Let's roll on to our next slide. I think next we're talking about our attributes and skills. That is a huge picture. It's almost illegible, but that's just an example of all of the skills in this game. Um, for our attributes, we have strength, dexterity, constitution, intelligence, wisdom, and charisma, which will probably sound very familiar to everyone watching this video right now.
Yeah.
For skills, there are acrobatics, arcana, athletics, crafting, deception, diplomacy, intimidation, lore, which you can have a different type of lore skill. So, for instance, lore warfare or lore architecture or anything like that. Medicine, nature, occultism, performance, religion, society, stealth, survival, and thievery. That almost became a little song at the end.
Yeah.
So how does proficiency work in Pathfinder?
So there are different levels of proficiency. There's untrained, trained, expert, master, and legendary. So the way proficiency works with those is your mere skills are you just whatever attribute bonus you have. Then depending on your level of proficiency, you may be better at it, or you may be worse at it. As you level up in the system, you get the opportunity to increase your skills from untrained to trained or trained expert, expert to master, master to legendary. In addition, your skills also all go up. All of your trained skills go up as you level, just naturally. So I think with every sort of level of proficiency, untrained, trained, expert, master, legendary, you get like a +2 bonus for each one. And then you also get a bonus for anything you're trained in or higher, which is just equal to your level. So by level 20, if you're one of the lucky people that gets to play in a campaign that's gone from 1 to 20, you'll see your skills be incredibly, incredibly high. And it works because Pathfinder 2nd Edition is really about a game that this is one of the things I love about it. Martial characters, skill monkeys, and those kind of characters do get the chance to feel like big damn heroes. I think
Mm-hmm.
there's other systems where once you get to higher levels, it always feels like if you're not a spellcaster, you don't get a lot to do. But in PF2, you find ways to use your skills to do actions in combat, out of combat. I think one of the things I love is that every skill has an actual use. There's other systems where you just have a skill and just says, "Oh, I know a little bit about this," and that's all that skill is ever used for. But I think
Mm-hmm.
the best example is probably medicine. I think medicine is a great, 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 favorable skill. Um, I think medicine in the system, when you're out of combat, you can actually use it to heal your companions, your allies. And as you get better in medicine, as you go from trained to expert, you heal more. You go to expert to master, you can heal even more. So it's a way to give the people that are focused on skills a chance to show that their skills are just as valuable as someone who is casting the heal spell all the time.
Absolutely. Yeah, fantastic. Yes, in Pathfinder, the numbers get very big very quickly. I think I am playing a third level character right now, and the main weapon I use, I have a +11 to hit,
Yeah.
which at third level is quite a big number if
Yeah.
you're used to playing
It's
D&D.
it feels kind of cool though to be like roll something be like, oh, but I have a +11 to it. Ha ha
Yeah.
ha. And then you
Oh
get to
yeah.
see that big numbers come by. It feels good. It feels good to always see your character get better at something every level. It doesn't feel like there's dead levels where nothing happens. You're always getting
Yeah.
better every level.
It's very tangible, for
Yeah,
sure.
yeah.
Fantastic. Well, aside from attributes and skills, Pathfinder does also have saving throws, which is on the next slide. Uh, Pathfinder, however, only has three types of saving throws. Fortitude, to resist disease, poison, and other physical effects. Reflex, to evade effects. And will, to resist effects that target the mind and personality. So there are no intelligence, charisma, or strength saving throws in Pathfinder. We just have these three. Um, and yeah, that's about it.
Yeah, yeah. I think the only thing
Uh,
I would add to that is you'll find these skills, these saving throws, are because there's only three. You can try to find ways, practically in combat, even out of combat, to be like, I know this big beefy fighter. He probably doesn't have a very good will saving throw, and working with your teammates to sort of target that. And it creates a more tactical kind of environment, a more teamwork kind of oriented environment to try to target what people are worst at.
Absolutely. And I mean, to even take it back to what you said about every skill roll having a use in combat, if you want to roll some sort of knowledge skill in combat to learn which saving throw your opponent is the weakest at and use that to your advantage, that is absolutely something that Pathfinder allows and encourages.
Yep. Yeah, I know for some people that feels a little metagamey, but I think you, as a player and as a GM, need to find a way to divorce. Like, we're at a table, we're playing a game, we're rolling dice, we got a bag of Doritos over here, a bag of pretzels over here. We we are playing a game. At the end of the day, we're playing a game. We find ways to justify that in character by saying like, oh, that big beefy fighter, he looks a little nervous. He looks like a little bit scared. So maybe that means he has a low will saving throw. He seems pretty old, like his limbs are a little stiff. He has a low reflex saving throw. Or things like that is how you can try to blend the idea of metagaming, the fact you are playing a game with um a more tactical or more role playing oriented game.
Absolutely. I mean, at the end of the day, information must be conveyed one way or another. And
Yep,
if we can make it into a little bit of role play, I think that's the ideal.
yep,
But information, the flow of information is part of a TTRPG.
yep, yep.
And that's my little metagaming soapbox. I think the last couple of things we have for the basic mechanics is our types of actions. So I think we've got exploration mode on the next slide. There we go. So Pathfinder breaks itself down into kind of three different modes: exploration, encounters, and downtime. So exploration mode entails like role play and travel. It's very flexible. You can take certain types of actions while exploring. You could try to avoid notice while traveling. You could scout, which I mentioned before, which gives you a +1 circumstance bonus to your initiative should anything sneak up on you. Um, so stuff like that is part of exploration mode.
Mm-hmm.
Anything else you want to add about
No, I
exploration?
think exploration mode is probably the most, I would say, most GM reliant of any of the modes, because there's some GMs that really don't play a lot with this. There's some that like playing it. I am running a campaign called Kingmaker right now, which is a lot of exploring, where I use it a lot more often than a more dungeon crawl game or a more city-based game. It's really going to depend on your GM and it depend on the system. I find it is helpful that to have that, just so to kind of separate out these different modes, combat, exploration, and all of these other things. Which I guess leads us to our second mode, which would be downtime mode. Um,
Downtime.
do you want me to read this? I'll read this.
Yeah, if you like,
Sure.
feel free.
Downtime mode is played day to day rather than a minute by minute or scene by scene. Usually, this mode of play occurs when you're in safety of a settlement, maybe recovering from your adventures or studying an artifact you found. So as a GM, I often say this is when you can craft, this is when you can shop, this is when you can do all of these other things, or maybe have your little role play scenarios here and there that pocket the beats and moments in between the big adventures that you go on.
Yeah. This is when you can get a job. You need to pay the
Yes.
bills. This is also, we'll get into how healing works a little bit later. But downtime is also a time if your character got beat up, they will need potentially some extra time to heal as well. And those are two of the three modes, and we're going to get to encounters later. Don't you guys worry about that.
Yeah.
I think the last little bit of the basic mechanics is hero points. So before we get to character options,
Oh, yeah.
um
Yeah.
hero points, what are hero points, Richard?
Hero points are dice rolls you roll to make your GM's life miserable. So, hero points are basically if you fail a roll, you get to roll another dice. There's different ways of educating hero points. More book generally recommends that every adventure start with one hero point at the start of a session, and for every hour they get another hero point. And at the end of the session, all those hero points are gone, so they do not carry over from session to session. Use them or lose them. Um, they can be used for a couple of things. They can be used to re-roll any roll. They can be used to stop your character from dying if you burn all of them, and then your character's no longer dying, is still unconscious. Um, they are really, really, really useful for when you are critically failing, like saving throws, and you're like, oh, this would be bad. Because, like we mentioned, critically fail can make things even worse or take double damage or whatever it is. You don't want to do that. We'll roll a hero point. Or if you really, really, really need to hit this bad guy because all of your other party members are down and you just missed, let's burn that hero point. They are really a way for players to really feel like they are heroes at the big moments. This has always been my advice: saving for the big moments when you need something to happen. And always save one just in case you start dying.
Yes, the pro strat is to always have one in the chamber just in
Yeah,
case you get hit really
yeah,
hard and go down.
yeah, yeah. I will say that different GMs run it differently. I know that the book also recommends that if something cool happens, give the players a hero point. You can have a maximum of 3 for the session, so feel free to give out those hero points as they come. I'm someone who always forgets every hour to give out the hero point, and I know one of the most common house rules is really to just give your players 2 at the start of the session and give them 1 at the end of break. Or give your players 1 at the start of the session, 1 at the end of the break. It really depends on your GM's preference.
Yeah, everybody runs it a little bit differently.
Yeah.
All right, fantastic. So obviously the comparison in Dungeons and Dragons is inspiration. I think hero points are a little bit more concrete because that has that cap of 3 and there is a set time that you get the hero points. And I do like that it is a use it or lose it attitude because oftentimes we've all played that game where we have a healing potion or whatever, and we never use it because we might need it later.
Yeah.
Well, you can't use it later. You have to use it now. So,
Yeah.
problem solved.
Yeah. I will say to my players, when it gets close to like quitting time, they still have hero points in the chamber. They just start burning them all on the most silly stuff.
Yeah.
So might as well. Might as well.
Yeah, why not?
Yeah.
Use it or lose it, as the saying
Yeah.
goes.
Yeah.
Oh, perfect. So that is the basic bare bones of the Pathfinder mechanics. We are going to take a short break, and after the short break, we will get into the meat and potatoes of Pathfinder. We're going to talk about character options. We're going to talk about encounters and combat, and also potentially some advice for running the game. So I have a feeling the second half of our program will be much longer than the first. But we will see you all after the break. Hello and welcome back to Rough Start. I hope you had a nice little break. Before our break, we talked about Pathfinder Second Edition, its history and the lore of the game, as well as the basic mechanics, rolling a 20-sided die, critical successes and failures, your attributes and your skills, your saving throws, the different types of actions you can take in the game, and hero points. Now, after our little break, we are going to be talking about, first of all, character options. So, Pathfinder is a game that has a lot of character options. If we want to hit that next little slide, there we go. Well, as a side note, one thing I really like about this book, I have my beautiful, lovely little physical copy here, is that it gives you all of the information for characters in a little graph, as shown here, with the images and basic information. So if you just want a quick little snapshot of what you can play in this game, you just open it up to that page and you look at it. It's all in one place, and that's what I love about it.
Hmm. And I also
Um,
I have my own copy of one of those special editions
ooh,
because
fancy.
I'm obnoxious. But one of the other things I really also like about this book is, well, on the left side, it makes it so easy to find what you need over here instead of having to flip all the way back to the index and then come all the way back to find everything. It's very, very nicely laid out for me
Yes,
to, when I'm
it's
GMing, to
lovely.
quickly flip through, find what I need.
Excellent book. We love, we
Yeah.
stand even, perhaps. Yeah, great book. But on this image here that we have from the Player Core 1. So also as a side note, a side note to the side note, right now the Paizo team is working on the second edition remaster. And the Player Core 1 is out currently. It's been remastered and fine-tuned and fixed up. Player Core 2 is not out yet, but we do know what ancestries and heritages are going to be in it. So in Player Core 1, as shown in this little lovely little image, we've got human, dwarf, elf, gnome, goblin, halfling, leshy, which is a plant person, and orc. What will be released in Player Core 2 is catfolk, gnoll, hobgoblin, kobold, lizardfolk, ratfolk, and tengu, which is like a bird person.
There are also, throughout the other books that have been published, lots and lots of other ancestries for you to find, discover, and play around with. There's some really, really weird ones. There's a little puppet that comes to life called a puppet. There's also some bigger, automatons, like robot people, androids, depending on, what your GM allows, but they don't allow to fit the world of the narrative, the story they want to tell. So there are a lot of other ancestries that kind of fit your needs. And then recently they just released a new book that had minotaurs, centaurs, and all of these other really, really cool beastkin races, or which are like, if you want to wake, not beastkin, but awakened animals, which if you want to play like a turtle that has awakened, is like anthropomorphic, then you are more than free to do so. Which means I get to finally live out my Ninja Turtle fantasies and play my own double side wielding turtle if I wanted to.
Yes, far out. Oh, totally radical, dude.
Yeah,
I also want to play a Ninja Turtle.
radical.
Damn. That's fantastic. Yes, as you said, so many ancestries and heritages, including versatile heritages, and you can have mixed ancestries too. So if you want to play a half orc, you could do an orc with mixed ancestry with an elf or with a human, and things like that. So it's very flexible.
I think I really like that. Being able to take that sort of powerful ancestry on anything like. If I want to play a dwarf, I want to play the son of a dwarf. Trader who fell in love with an orc woman, then I absolutely can play dwarf half orc. It's not limited to just humans being the most horny race or ancestry and all of these other systems that are able to cross being like anyone could be anything. And it's cool. And it's cool.
Yeah, why
Yeah.
not? I mean, this is a world where like magic exists, so maybe
Yeah.
you were created via magic potion,
Yeah.
anything's possible.
Yeah. There's ancestries, there's a versatile heritage where you are playing a mirror image of someone that actually exists. There's all of these super, super, super cool ideas or changelings, which are the offspring of hags or things like that. You can find something for everyone. If you can't, you could probably reskin something that already exists.
Yeah, you can let your imagination fly with this one.
Yeah.
You can, the possibilities are almost endless.
Yep.
Um, but beyond the amazing role play opportunities, let's talk about mechanically what your ancestry and heritage actually determines for your character. Um, so these options determine your base hit points, things like your size, your speed, what languages you know, certain traits you have, attribute boosts and flaws, potentially. Um, Whether or not you have low light or dark vision, you may have access to certain different types of feats tied to your ancestry, and stuff like that.
And speaking of a speech for ancestry, it goes back to one of the earlier things I said, where at every level you're going to get something new. You can take more ancestry feats as you sort of level up, which allows you to like really lean into like more of your elf heritage, more into your orc heritage, become a paragon of your ancestral, paragon of your culture if you wanted to be.
Yeah, absolutely. All that good stuff. So the second part of character option is picking your background, which I unfortunately do not have a slide for. But as an example, a background could be you were an artisan, a bounty hunter, an entertainer, a noble, stuff like that. What did you do in your life before you were an adventurer? And these backgrounds grant you another attribute boost and some additional skill training as well.
And I believe that the backgrounds also grant you an additional feat, skill feat as well as
I think
being
that's
trained
true.
in
That sounds
skills.
right.
Yep, yep. And I would say that would probably lead me into my next thing. I don't know if you've noticed, but ancestry's A, background's B, and then with C we have classes, and then D is
Remember your
details, E is
ABC,
equipment. Yep,
everybody.
ABC. That's how you build a character. So the classes are there again. Lots of them. Pathfinder Second Edition has a lot of classes. In Player Core One, we have the Bard, Cleric, Druid, Fighter, Ranger, Rogue, Witch, and Wizard. And
Perfect. And
then
I think
Player
we've
Core
got those on a
2.
slide
Yeah,
as
go ahead.
well.
Yeah, oh, we
Oop,
have a
sorry.
slide as well. There we
Yeah,
go.
look at that.
Oh, yeah.
Beautiful.
There it is. And in Player Core 2 will be released the Alchemist, Barbarian, Champion, Investigator, Monk, Oracle, Sorcerer, and Swashbuckler will be coming out in that book. There are already existing versions of those class again and again, 100% compatible. If you want to jump into Pathfinder now, go for it and use those old classes. There are also a lot of other classes and other books to fill in a lot of the other details. There's a psychic, thaumaturge, kineticist, magus, summoner, gunslinger, and inventor. There's a lot of classes. A lot of
Amazing. Yes, my next note in the outline says, "Good Lord, there are so
them.
many classes."
Yeah. I would say the Pazos team has done a really, really good job of making every class feel unique with their own unique mechanics. So even though there may be some overlap, like the investigator and the rogue are very much the skill monkeys of the team, there's definitely enough that separates them where I don't feel like they're the same class.
For sure. Yeah, awesome. The care put into each of these classes I think is really lovely. And they grant you things like your total HP. So your ancestry granted you a little base that you add from your ancestry, and then you add your class HP together. Initial proficiencies, what you're trained in, or what you are an expert in potentially. What saving throw you're good at, skills, attacks, stuff like that. Class features, and once again more feats too.
More
This
feats.
is
I
a game
think
that,
Pathfinder really is a game about feats.
yeah,
There's feats everywhere. This is really what helps you define your character and helps you figure out how you play a character or what they're good at or what they're just average at, if you would. There's class feats, there's ancestry feats, channel feats, and skill feats as well. And as you level up, you'll get more and more feats, but give you more and more things to do inside and outside of combat. So you never feel like the only thing I can do in the game is swing a sword. There's always something else you can do, and all of these feats that you get really help bolster that idea that there's so many things to do, so many options where it doesn't run the risk of feeling very, very samey, if I can,
yeah.
I think would be the word I use.
Yes, absolutely. I mean, if our viewers haven't guessed it yet, Pathfinder is definitely a game that wants you to think tactically about what's going on, and the classes are designed to help facilitate that, as well as all those delicious, delicious feats you get. And you can do some really wacky stuff with feats. Um, I think last time we were talking about Pathfinder, and I mentioned I was playing a gunslinger, and one of the high level feats that you can get is you can intimidate someone to death, basically, which is
Yeah,
just,
yeah.
I can't wait.
And
I want that so bad.
that's a great, great, great theme. There's on the same intimidate guild feat chain as you get better and get other cool things like that's like the premiere once you become legendary in intimidation, scare people to death, but you also get things before then. Like you get the chance to intimidate someone at the start of combat, like before we even start making your turns, just being like, I'm that much of a badass. I'm Clint Eastwood walking into the tavern, everyone ducking behind the tables, the bar instantly clearing because I am that scary. You find a lot of things like that. It's even true of the classes where you have those feats, like you feel great, you already feel like a hero at low level. By the time you hit like the top level class feats, you're gonna feel like an amazing hero with like a champion, the holy warrior, wielding their amazing longsword that has all of these special holy properties, or maybe it's a holy shield, or a holy steed, or whatever it may be. There's so many cool, cool, cool things you get to do as you level up that I know my players are just like, I can't wait till I get to be this level and I get to do this thing.
Yes. There's also a very helpful online tool called Path Builder. And if you are looking to build a Pathfinder character, something it does that's very useful is it lets you build out everything at every level right at the start. So you can pick whatever you want and have it all set and ready to go, up to level 20. And then you just click whatever level you're playing on.
Yeah.
And
And
it's super helpful to be able to plan out the whole character.
yeah. And it's free. It is
And
free.
it's
You can
free.
just log in into it. You can pay $5 to support the person who created it. I believe his Reddit username is Red Razors. I'm a big fan of him and everything he's done. And by $5, you get to unlock some of the more super advanced features. And it's permanent. It's honestly, as someone who plays GMs a lot of Pathfinder, best $5 I've ever spent. While I'm on the subject of free things, I do want to mention all of the rules for Pathfinder are free. They're free. So you can log on to
What?
Archive of Thieves or PF2 Easy, and they're all free. They're there and ready for you to use. Paizo really just wants you to play their game. Because they realize that if you play their game, you're going to want to buy their books. I know I have a bookshop right there that you can see. All of these are all Paizo books, just on this small bookshop over here. So I'm happy to support the company that wants to deliver high quality content at and make sure that it's accessible to players. Because one of the biggest problems of our hobby is it can be a little expensive to buy. You feel like you need to buy all of these books. But over here, as long as your GM has your books, they can cross-reference things easy, you should be good. And Path Builder is a great example of how Paizo has said we want to encourage the community to build things, to make our game even easier to play, make it more accessible for people.
Yes, fantastic. We are not sponsored by Paizo, but we should be.
You know, we should be. I love Paizo.
Because they also have lovely paperback editions as well, which are a little cheaper than the hardback versions. So if you can't afford a hardback and you still want to purchase a physical copy, they have little paperbacks, which I think is a great idea, and everyone in the TTRPG space should do if they can afford to print multiple different types of books. Because oh my gosh, lovely.
Yep.
Anyway, that's enough of our little shilling for Paizo.
Yeah.
If anyone from Paizo is watching this, you should give us
Yeah.
money. Uh,
Yeah. Sure. They're honestly just a good company, and I like supporting them. Now they are. I think they recently last year approved a union, Paizo Workers Union. I don't get what it was called. So they're a union-funded company. They are so committed to diversity and inclusion that it's a company I want to support. So I'm happy to support Paizo. I'm happy to be here talking about this.
no, yay!
Oh,
Perfect. Amazing. You love to see it.
yeah.
Is there anything else you want to add about the character options, ancestries, classes, whatever, etc.?
Yes. So as if you pick up a book, you go on those free resources that we just talked about. You often see things or have tags on them. Some of them just say uncommon or rare. And those are really just a way for your GM to say these are probably might not necessarily fit into the common worlds of whatever fantasy adventure I am running. They're not necessarily, they sometimes can be a measure of power balance, but more often than not, I found that Paizo has done a very good job of keeping things balanced. Some of the ancestors I talked about, like the puppet, which is a soul that is inhabiting like a cute little stuffed doll, maybe a creepy stuffed doll. I don't know. Is or has the rare tag on it, which means it might not necessarily be appropriate for every game. Talk to your GM about it. Uncommon is similar. Maybe it's usually okay, but definitely talk to your GM about it. And if they don't see a tag, you should probably feel free to use it. It won't break the game or anything.
Yes, definitely always talk to your GM. I remember I
Yeah.
really wanted to play a mummy, and the GM was like, by the way, no undead
Yeah.
ancestries. And I went, yeah, shoot. So I
Yeah.
picked something else instead.
Yeah. And in case you missed that, yes, there are undead ancestries. If you want to play a werewolf or a vampire, or a ghost or a skeleton, you can. One day I will play my spooky skeleton. One day.
I want to be a spooky skeleton too.
Oh,
All skeleton campaign when coming to Rough
yes.
Magic Twitch.
Halloween episode. I know what I'm going to make this happen now. Halloween
Okay,
episode. That's
listen.
what we'll do. Yeah.
Perfect. I am so excited for that now.
Oh,
All right. I think we should move on to whatever really is excited about. Let's talk about combat in Pathfinder.
alright.
There we go. Look at that beautiful slide. So initiative, starting off just right at the beginning where you'd start combat. Initiative is most of the time actually based on your perception skill. But if there are extenuating circumstances, you could use any skill. I know stealth is also really commonly used if you were like sneaking up on an enemy and it's time to roll initiative. You can use your stealth roll as your initiative roll as well.
Yeah. And I think one of the ones that I end up using a lot in my campaigns is diplomacy or intimidation. Like if they're in the middle of like
Ooh.
this sort of like heavy conversation that is turning sour really quick, I'll be like, use diplomacy for your initiative roll instead.
Yes, amazing. I think there was a lot of intimidation in one of the recent Gears of Revolution episodes that
Yes.
premiered
There
on
was a
Twitch.
lot of them. Yeah.
Plug,
Yeah.
plug, plug our Twitch account
Thank you for
where
the
you
plug.
run
Thank you
Pathfinder.
for the plug. Yeah.
Yeah, fantastic. So the image we've got up on the screen is definitely the most lauded aspect of Pathfinder combat, and it is the three action turn. Basically, what that means is gone are the days of your major action, your minor action, and your move action. You have three actions on your turn, and they are all equal, and you can do whatever you want with them. There are certain actions that cost a single action, which is that first little pip. There are two action activities, which is that second little pip. There are three action activities. There are reactions as well, and there are free actions, which don't cost any of your three actions to use. Do you want to walk us through some of the basic actions you can take?
Sure. I think some of the very, very basic actions, or the most basic action is just move. Move 25 feet, move 30 feet, whatever your speed is. You can also drop prone, escape. You can interact with an object. You can leap, seek, stand, step, stride, strike. Everything costs an action. If you want to, like, stride 3 times, you absolutely can do that. Want to use all of your actions to attack? You can. Probably shouldn't, but you can. Because Pathfinder offers so many other things you can do with the actions that just figuring out what actions they have. And the reason why I say you probably shouldn't attack 3 times is something called a multiple attack penalty. What that means is on your first attack, you suffer no penalty. On your second attack, you have a -5 penalty to attack. On your third attack, it's a -10. So the chances of you hitting on your third attack are very, very, very low. Of
Yeah.
course, there are ways to sort of mitigate these penalties. Like if you are a ranger that is really focused on flurrying, that penalty might just be a -4. If you have light weapons, it might even reduce even further. So there are ways to reduce that. It really just depends on your character build. Um, there are spells that you can cast that take anywhere from 1 to 3 actions to cast. For I think the 2 examples I would use for spells, one is heal, and the reason I use heal as an example is because for each action you spend, heal gets better. The first action you spend as first level cleric heal is like 1d8, and that's it. The second action, if you spend 2 actions to use heal, it'll heal 1d8, and then you get a big bonus to it. If you use all 3 actions to cast heal, you'll heal like everyone within a 30-foot radius of you, which includes bad guys, so be careful if you use that. Or there's other spells like shield. The shield spell, just for 1 action, put up a shield in front of you. There's other spells that cost 2 actions. That fear is a 2-action spell. There's lots of different ways to use spells and use your actions to create a really, really fun and dynamic combat where everything's always shifting depending on what's happening around you. And there's also holding actions for a reaction if you wanted to do. If you wanted to hold, like, if someone's going to come and charge at you, you don't want to burn your actions, you said. 1 action, draw your weapon, and 2 actions, get ready to strike them. Someone once it gets in range, you can hit them with whatever you have in your hand. And one of the other great things about these actions is skills can be used in combat. We talked about intimidation earlier and being able to just put the fear of God into someone you're fighting because you're a big bruiser fighter, or you're just a sort of badass Clint Eastwood gunslinger or whatever it is. You use actions to do that. You can use medicine in combat to help heal with the right feats. You can use diplomacy. You can use knowledge skills to try and recall knowledge, like we mentioned, to figure out their strengths and weaknesses. Can't think of anything else we can use actions for. I know this seems like a lot of actions for those that are new to Pathfinder. Don't worry about it. You can probably, every character has something they're good at. Just focus on those actions they're good at, and you'll be in good shape. All of these actions are
Yes.
for, like, everyone. Like, you're not going to find a little mousy wizard who's going to be good at intimidation, so you don't need to worry about that. You'll probably be focused on recall knowledge and casting spells. Your big beefy fighter is going to be focusing on attacking, maybe athletics to grapple someone, and things like that.
Yeah. And I mean, I think even though the list looks long and intimidating, it's very much common sense things. So
Yeah.
in other systems, what might happen is, you as a player would say, "Oh, hey, GM, can I do XYZ?" And they'd go, "Well, I guess." But here in Pathfinder, it's, "Can I do XYZ?" "Oh yeah, that's this type of action." Like it is just laid out for you. So don't worry about memorizing the list. If you can just do whatever feels natural in combat, and there will be an action associated with what you want to do.
Hmm. And I'll add that as we move on to our next topic, which is conditions. A lot of those actions you do can impose conditions on people. Intimidation can, for example, impose the frightened condition on someone, or grappling someone, like using athletics to grapple, can grab them, restrain them, depending on your degree of success. Do you want to talk about the frightened condition?
Yes,
As
I
someone who
do, and I
wants
think
to use intimidation a lot.
yes. I think we've got conditions on the next slide too. So conditions can be very powerful in Pathfinder. Certain conditions, like the frightened condition, have numerical values attached to them. So you could be like frightened 1 or frightened 2, etc. Those conditions give you penalties based on that numerical value. So if you are frightened 1, you will have a -1 penalty to uh basically all of your shit. This includes like your armor class, and things like that. So conditions that have penalties you don't want as a character. They are bad for you, but great when you're giving them to someone else for sure.
Uh, yeah.
Because like we mentioned with critical successes, Pathfinder is a game where some crit fishing can happen. So if you make your enemy's armor class 1 less, that means you have to roll 1 lower in order to crit. So that becomes super duper helpful.
I have nothing else to add to conditions other than, like you
Amazing.
said, it's super useful way to really stress the idea in Pathfinder Second Edition. Teamwork is the key word. Teamwork is what you as players really want to focus on. And if you're all working together as a team imposing conditions, taking advantage of these conditions that you impose, you're going to find you have a lot of an easier time battling some of the harder creatures in the game.
Yeah, you can really start wailing on dudes.
Yep. 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 Yep.
To put it inelegantly.
Yeah.
Oh, amazing. So now that we've got conditions covered, I think our next big topic is spellcasting. Which there's a lot in regards to spellcasting. I've only played a little bit of spellcasting in Pathfinder, but I think I know the basics of how it works if we want to go over that.
All right.
Oh, look, hey, that's the multiple attack
Yeah.
penalty.
Well, I guess it was out of order. Sorry. Oh.
Oops. No, I think I did that, so that is totally fine. We can
Oh.
just skip past it.
Oh.
Anyone who's a visual learner, take note of the multiple attack penalty.
Yeah.
Yeah, so we've got an example kind of spell card up right now. We can see things like, what can we see on that? Let's see. Um, we've got things like what tradition the spell belongs to, and we'll talk about the magical traditions in a second. The casting time. So some spells may take an action to cast, some may take a full minute to cast, some have requirements or a trigger that needs to happen in order for the spell to go off. Um, the spell will also have a range, area, and targets listed. The duration of the spell, as well as if someone can defend against the spell happening to them. Um, then the effects of the spell are described, and then if you are of a higher level, you could potentially heighten certain spells, and that just makes them a little bit more effective. Uh, do a little bit more damage, stuff like that.
There's four different traditions. Wait, hold on. Yep, there's four different traditions that we talked about, which is the arcane, divine, occult, and primal, and they really kind of just are. How would I describe this? Arcane, they're kind of really just the kind of magic that you use. Arcane could be the kind of like scholarly and book knowledge, just like wizards. Primarily the uses of that. Divine, if you get your powers from more divine oriented source, like gods or otherworldly beings of that sort. Primal is nature, like druids. And occult is just all the weird stuff that people are too scared to name, or can be just these little bits and pieces, these odds and ends you picked up everywhere. Each of these traditions really has its own flavor. To really drive home the point that all of these classes are unique, and depending on what class you play, some classes even allow you to pick what tradition you like. A sorcerer can pick to be a divine tradition, be a divine spellcaster, or an arcane spellcaster, a primal spellcaster, depending on what bloodline they have, which is similar. There's lots of really cool ways that traditions can interact in the game.
Yeah, that's really interesting. Being able to kind of pick and choose for some classes what
Yeah.
arcane, magical tradition they belong to. Really, it's just it serves a mechanical purpose, and then it's helpful for like spell lists. You just pick the arcane spell list if you're a wizard. But it also provides a role-playing opportunity for a class like witch or sorcerer, to say, well, where do I get my magic powers from, and how does that
Yeah.
reflect in my character?
Yeah. Yeah,
Uh,
I love using traditions as jam to really um find a way to describe the flavor of the worlds that I'm building. If something's more arcane, what does that mean? Like if they find an item that's more arcane power than divine power. And you'll see some spells overlap. They're on like different spell lists. I think trying to think of a good one. Electric Arc, for example, is on both the arcane and the primal spell list because you can find it's more arcane magic and more primal. But how does Electric Arc look different versus arcane versus primal? It's a great role playing opportunity for players to really find ways to describe it however they wish.
yes, perfect. I am a huge fan of describing how your spell looks different, compared to the average
Yeah,
spell.
yeah,
I think that is a wonderful little tool to have in your back pocket. Um, Especially because I think that the remaster second edition did away with the schools of magic, so
yeah,
there's no more like abjuration, evocation, blah 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 blah. It's just arcane, divine, occult, primal.
yeah, yeah. I think for wizards specifically because there's no schools of like the old school schools of magic. They definitely have just more curriculum. So it's a college of protein form, which is all about spells that just like adjust your form. They can be of any type as long as they do that. So they found really cool ways to sort of like describe spells and then remaster that I'm really enjoying.
For sure. Love that. So beyond the magical traditions, there are different types of spell casting in the game. We have spontaneous spell casting versus prepared spell casting. So to start off with prepared spell casting, each prepared spell is expended after a single casting. So this is like something a wizard casting a spell would be a prepared spell. If you want to cast that particular wizard spell more than once in a day, you need to prepare that spell multiple times. So a spell slot isn't a catch-all for whatever spell you want to use. You have to assign what spell slots you want to use for what spells for prepared spell casting.
Yeah. And on the flip side, we have spontaneous spellcasting, which is if you have three first level spell slots and you've memorized three different spells, you can cast those three spells in any combination you want to get rid of those three spell slots. There's advantages and disadvantages to both. As a player,
Mm-hmm.
it depends on how you want to play. I think with spontaneous casters, you can never switch those spells out, but with prepared, you can. Every morning, you can swap them out. If you're a wizard or a cleric or something, and I'm going to be fighting undead this day. Maybe I want something that's going to do a little bit more damage then. I'm fighting trolls. I want some fire spells or acid spells. With spontaneous, you have to be a little bit more selective about the kind of spells you pick.
Absolutely. And to build off that even more, we also have focus spells and innate spells. A focus spell uses a pool of focus points to be able to cast.
Yeah.
After which you can take a certain action called a refocus action to kind of gain those focus points back and be able to cast spells again. And innate spells are spells that are innate to you. Perhaps you have something from your ancestry that allows you to cast a spell, once a day or something. That would be an innate spell.
And you'll also be able to, if once you get high enough level, there's items that will allow you to cast spells as well. There's lots of different ways you can get spell casting if you wanted to.
Amazing. Yes, we don't have much about magic items in Pathfinder, but Pathfinder is definitely a game that expects you to collect magic items and amplify and augment your abilities with them too.
Yep, yep. There is definitely this expectation for GMs to make sure that you give your players magic items and make sure the power balance is nice and tight and what it should be. And also, players just like receiving them. They're cool. Give them to them. So,
Totally cool. Oh, I think we forgot to move to the next slides. I think the next one
oh
is about
shoot.
refocusing.
Oh, the
There
focus
we
is
go.
over
That's our
there.
refocus.
Yeah,
You need to have a focus pool, and then I think our next one is the magical traditions. If we want to,
think
yeah,
I
there we
jumped
go.
ahead. Yeah.
Beautiful.
Oh,
Interestingly enough, the bard is an occult
yeah.
spellcaster.
Yeah.
Um,
Yeah, I've always figured a bard is just picking up bits and odds and ends from here and there. That's where you get sort of his magic from.
yeah, they're from the College of Life, man. They are just learning everywhere they go.
Yeah, totally, man. Yeah,
Yeah, foolery is like the sun; it shines everywhere. To paraphrase Twelfth Night.
yeah, yeah. All right.
Perfect. What do we have next? Let's take a look. Ooh, we can talk about rest and healing and your daily prep that you can do as a character. I think our next slide potentially has some information on that. Yeah, recovery checks. Beautiful. So, in combat, if you fall to 0 HP, you fall unconscious and you gain a condition. Whoa. It is the dying condition, and that condition has a numerical value next to it. So you would gain dying 1 to start. Then you would make a flat check with a DC equal to 10 plus your current dying value. So if you're at dying 1, you'd make a flat check and you'd need to roll an 11 or above to see if you get better or you get worse, basically. So critical success, your dying value is reduced by 2. A success, your dying value is reduced by 1. A failure, your dying value increases. And a critical failure, your dying value increases by 2. And this is not great for you if you critically fail because you can only reach dying 4 in Pathfinder. And then you will be dead
Yes.
after that.
That directive life. Yeah.
You will be an ex-adventurer.
Yeah. Yes. Uh, I will add a couple of things about dying and recovery. First, I think one of the really small, tiny rules that Pathfinder does that I really liked was when you die, your initiative changes to going right before the person that just knocked you out. Not when you get knocked unconscious, to right before the person just knocked you out. The reason they do that is so it gives your allies a full round to try and get to you and help you up before you have to start making those recovery checks. Like for example, if Dane the dwarf is fighting Alvin the orc, and orc knocks Dane out, and Dane was supposed to go after right after. the orc knocks stay down. Normally, you would have to roll these recovery checks. Your friends wouldn't even get a chance to hear you, but because they move right before, you've got all that time to go right back and try and get yourself healed. The other thing is, going down is bad because every time you come up, you become wounded. And what wounded condition is you go down again, your dying condition increases by your wounded value. So Dane, this dwarf, he got knocked down, dying one. He comes back up. He's now a wounded one. If he gets knocked out again, he's going to skip all the way down, dying two. If he comes back up, he's now at wounded two. If he gets hit again, he's now all the way down at dying three. So the more you go up and down, the harder it is to just get back up.
Yeah.
And yeah, it can
Better to
go
not
bad
go
very
down
quick.
in the first place, you know?
Don't go down the first time. And I think this really helps healers to feel like they're valuable, to make sure that your allies stay up in the fight. They don't want to go down. In other editions, if you go down, pop back up, you're fine. You're fine. You have a
Yeah.
little less hit points, but next time you go down, pop back up, you're fine. But here, there's actual consequences to bad tactics, to making sure that your allies don't stay on their feet. You want to make sure that your allies are healed. You want to make sure they're always ready to stay in the fight.
Yes, excellent. It definitely discourages that yo-yo effect where you go down, you
Yeah,
get healed, you go up to 3 hit points, you immediately
yeah,
go back down because you only have 3 hit points anyway.
yeah,
So you
yeah.
really you wanna have your health be
Yeah.
maybe in the double digits.
Yes. Well, one little fun quirk is if you get critically hit and takes you unconscious, that counts as two. So if you haven't died yet, you get critically hit, you're now dying two, and things have gone bad really, really, really fast for you. So if you're already dying, you've already wounded one, get critically hit, you're now at dying three, and things have gone from bad to worse really, really, really quick.
Yeah.
So there are ways to
But
sort of go ahead.
oh no, I was just gonna ask how can you get better after you get hit?
How do you get better? Healing. I mean, I talked about the heal spell that's generally used in combat. There's other ways to heal outside of combat. One is to take a rest. You can rest for a long rest is 8 hours of rest once every 24 hours. It heals your constitution modifier multiplied by your level amount of hit points. And it also resets your abilities and spell slots. Um, the other way to heal is during that exploration mode we talked about earlier. Got that 10-15 minutes in between combat. Have someone who is trained in medicine go around and take the time to bind your wounds, use the medicine check to heal. The game really, really expects you to go into every combat at or close to full health. If you aren't able to do that, you're going to have a bad time very, very quickly. Uh, yeah. And the same many characters, when you take that long rest, have those daily preparations necessary to decide what spells they have prepared. Or during those short rests that aren't really a thing, but I kind of call them short rests, those 10-15 minutes during exploration mode, when you're binding wounds, you're using the refocus action to get some of those focus spells back. You're doing all of these other things as well to really heal yourself, to rest, recover, in between throwing yourself at dragons or whatever else you are fighting.
Yes. My the group that I play with in my home game, we call those short rests that aren't really short rests. We call it a massage train where everyone is just, healing the person in front of them and just kind of making sure we're all okay.
Yep. Yeah.
Fantastic. Yeah, thank you for taking point on the rest healing and those preparations. I think I will let you take even more of a point as we move on to advice for running the game. I have yet to run Pathfinder. I would really like to in the future, but I've mainly been a player so far. So, Richard, what advice do you have as someone who runs a lot of Pathfinder for someone who might be interested?
So I have two sets of advice, one for GMs and one for players. For
Perfect.
players, yeah, my advice is very, very simple. Teamwork makes the dream work. Pathfinder really is a game. I would say this. Dungeons and Dragons 5th Edition, as an example, is a game about the individual heroics of yourself. It is a game where you get to be these amazing individual heroes. Pathfinder 2nd Edition is a game where you get to be this amazing team of heroes. If you work together and you collaborate with each other, you're going to have a very, very good time. If you're just doing your own thing, you're going to find it doesn't work that well. So find ways to help your teammates be better at what they're good at, and your teammates will find ways to help you be better at what you're good at. For game masters, two big things I'm going to say are this: the math works. I've been running Pathfinder 2nd Edition since they started the playtest. So I've been running it since then. The math really, really, really works. Trust in the math. And what I mean by that is really be familiar with encounter building rules if you're building an encounter for players, because they work. There's lots of free websites, like I think it's one's called Mimic Fight Club, where you can say, I have 4 players at second level. These are the monsters I want to put, and to sort of look at the math and see if it works. And every monster has an experience award that it gives you, and it's so well designed that you are able to tell if an encounter is going to be trivial, moderate, severe, or extreme. And when you say severe, I think someone who also GMs 5th edition D&D, who has a campaign right now that's at 20th level, severe just means difficult. In Pathfinder, it means severe. You're going to see some of your players go down. Trust the math. If it says severe, it's bad. If it says extreme, someone's probably going to die. Figure out the narrative, the stories you want to tell. Um, because math works, every +1 matters. Every -1 matters. Charlotte talked a little bit about this earlier. And she said that stacking those penalties, Brighton can really, really help you or me. If you're doing it on the opponents, it can make your life miserable if they're doing it on you. Every
Yep.
+1 matters. So with all that in mind, for new GMs, trust in the math. Don't try and homebrew rules right off the bat. Rules that exist are great. I was helping a GM recently sort of build some magic items for their campaign, and they came up with these magic items, and I thought, flavor wise, they were really cool. And I looked at the numerical bonuses. I said, this is not going to work. Here's why. Because he was coming at it from a Pathfinder 1st edition, D&D 5th edition mindset, where it was big numbers look cool. That's what I want to give them. But because of the way critical successes and critical failures work, those big numbers can make or break your game. Um, we mentioned this. All the rules are available online for free. They're all available.
Yay!
Check them out. I do encourage you to support Paizo because I'm going to show for them again. They are a good company. I really love the work that they do. And if you are really, really interested in trying out Pathfinder 2nd Edition, there's no greater thing I can recommend to you than to use the beginner box. It's a very, very well crafted, like, adventure that you could probably get through 4 or 5 hours of gameplay that'll show you. It lays out exactly like this is how the skill check works for you as GM. This is what you need to explain to the players. Let them try it out. And they'll take you through all of these little encounters designed to really show you how the game works. It's a really, really, really well developed beginner box. And it comes with like some really cool stuff. There's dice, there's all of these handouts. There's just little books that you can give to players, book for yourself. It's just really, really well designed. Comes with its own character sheets with all this very, very helpful information. It says this is what this means. It's a great way to get new players into Pathfinder. I think the biggest piece of advice that I have to say, because I'm pretty sure this is going to be the longest rough start that has been filmed so far this season. We have thrown a lot at you. My biggest piece of advice is this: relax. It is much easier to be a GM in the system than any other system I've ever played. It is, for players, just relax. We've thrown a lot of action. Start at first level. Don't jump into third, fourth, fifth level. Start at first level. Learn your characters. You'll pick it up eventually. The rules are very, very intuitive. You very, once you get the hang of like what you're looking at, why you're looking at it, the how comes to you very, very quickly. The stream that I'm running, Gears Revolution, has 6 players. 5 of them never played Pathfinder before. After our first combat, I was like, wow, you all picked it up very, very quickly. They came from
Mm-hmm.
5th edition. They came from much, or some of them have played less rules intensive games. They picked it up very, very quickly. I'm proud of them. They're an incredible group of players. But really, just read the book, read the rules, know your characters, and relax. And you should be in very, very good shape. Now, I'm curious for you, as someone who has just gotten in Pathfinder, was playing a gunslinger, who is a new player. Do you have advice for people?
I think I do. And as a side note, I think our Eclipse Phase video might have this video beat for longest, but I might be wrong on that by the time we end this video. One of the longest. My advice as someone who was coming from D&D into Pathfinder, um, even though this game looks a lot like D&D, embrace the fact that it is not D&D, and if you try to run a D&D character in Pathfinder, you are going to have a bad time. Embrace the fact that it works differently. I think is my biggest piece of advice for players out there who maybe want to get into Pathfinder from D&D. Just know that it might look crunchier at first glance than 5e, but the rules kind of work so well. I feel that you hardly even notice that there are technically more rules in this
Yeah,
than 5e. So that would be my advice. Just,
yeah,
do something different. Step outside your comfort zone and embrace the fact that this is Pathfinder
yeah,
and play a
yeah.
Pathfinder character.
Yeah. I think one of the previous discussions that you and I had when we were discussing Pathfinder, about the rules and the complexity of the system is, I think D&D 5th edition is a game that puts a lot of burden on the GM to know all the rules and all of that, and the players can get by with like the bare minimum. I think Pathfinder 2, the burden is very much shared equally. Like, as long as you know the rules, you're familiar with the characters, you're gonna have a good time. So even though it seems crunchy, it really isn't, as long as you, because the GM has their own separate rules, the players have the rules. Make sure, just be a good player to the GM, understand your characters you are playing, and they will love you for it.
Yes. And I mean to build off of your point of teamwork makes the dream work, your GM is also a player. So incorporating them into the teamwork is a great way to make Pathfinder work, where again, like you said, the burden is shared between everyone of
Yeah,
making the rules work. And the burden is, in
yeah,
quotation marks, but yeah.
yeah. Yeah, I think the GM as a player is a really, really great way of looking at it. I always tell my players that every GM has their own styles. For me, I'm a GM that wants the players to succeed because I know the dice don't. And so I try to keep that in mind if you're a GM as a player, craft these incredible encounters that allow people to use all of these new skills that they have, the skill feats that they've just gotten in different and new and unique ways. It takes it it's a great way to create interesting encounters that don't become just a slog of this opponent has 500 hit points. I just need to keep hitting it until it goes down. You get to do other cool things. You get to intimidate them. You get to do all of these other things to create this very, very dynamic combat, or even these dynamic skills. And Pathfinder also has all of these wonderful, great other systems within that are baked into the rules. There's victory point systems, if you like, having as chase systems. There's all of these other things. There's research systems that you can look at to really develop the world in new and unique ways that don't just mean rolling a d20, adding a modifier. It's rolling a d20, adding a modifier, and all of these other cool little things happen because the mechanics are there to support that.
Amazing. I think with that, if you've nothing else to add, Richard, I think we can draw our discussion to a close. If we click the slide, will it take us to the beginning? Hey, beautiful. We can end on that amazing Rough Magic logo. Um, that is the basics of Pathfinder 2nd Edition. A little bit of a longer video, but I hope you stuck with us through the end. You can find the core rulebooks at paizo.com. You can also check out the archives of Nethys for all those rules for free. If you made it this far into the video, let me know in the comments below what class you'd want to play in Pathfinder 2e. I know I mentioned I'm playing a gunslinger right now in my home game, but I also really want to try out the remastered witch next. So I'm looking forward to that. How about you, Richard? And while we're at it, where can people find you or your projects online?
I generally just stick to the Rough Magic socials. Rough Magic has a great presence on Instagram, and most of the time, if you want to get in touch with me, check out the streams on Twitch. We have multiple streams on Twitch. We have two Pathfinder streams on Sundays. They're in rotation with each other, so 1 week I'm GMing, the other week I'm playing. The first one I'm GMing is a campaign called Gears of Revolution, based off this incredible work done by the people at End World Publishing that I brought in. I made a few tweaks of my own to bring it over from the system they used to build it to Pathfinder 2nd Edition, running that with a great, incredible group of players. And the second campaign is called Giant Slayer, which is an adaptation of a 1st edition Pathfinder campaign into 2nd edition, where I'm playing a very weird, creepy tiefling called Seven Deaths. You can check that out as well on Sundays. We also have other streams that we have through the week, like a gaming stream, video game stream, and keep an eye on our Twitch because we're hoping to continue to build out our Twitch presence with more and more streams as well.
Fantastic. I watched a little bit of Giant Slayer, and I have to say, I love Seven Deaths. They are
Such a
just so
weirdo.
wonderfully creepy. I think that's fantastic.
Creepy. He's a nice guy.
And
He's a nice guy, but he's creepy.
yeah,
Uh,
no, just perfectly nice.
yeah.
And what is your favorite Pathfinder class?
Oh God, I love support classes because I roll like crap. I just naturally roll like crap. So I like playing characters that feel effective. So the best way I can do that if I roll like crap is provide support to other characters. So my favorite Pathfinder class is the Bard. They're the
Ooh,
best support class in
amazing.
the game, in my humble opinion. Other than the Bard, I love Wizards just because I like playing spellcasters, clerics, Wizards, clerics, and bards. But bards are an incredibly fun class to play.
Perfect. Oh, I love that. Thank you so much for sharing. As always, you can find me lots of places online at the cornbread with a B. My Instagram is relatively new, so I'd super appreciate if you guys gave it a follow. And of course, don't forget to like this video if you liked the video, and subscribe to Rough Magic Games if you learned something new from this video, or even if we told you everything you already know about Pathfinder. This is the finale of the first season of Rough Start, so I will be taking a short break. But like Richard said, there will be plenty more coming to both this channel and our Twitch channel, twitch.tv/roughmagic, in the near future. Once again, we are Rough Magic Games. Thank you, Richard, and thank you to everyone else who joined me for a lovely season 1 of Rough Start. And I'll see you in the next one. Bye, guys!